The Arizona sun hammered down on the military convoy, its glare flashing off brass buttons as the soldiers escorted a lone wagon across the dusty stretch of desert. Inside June, Mara pressed a handkerchief to her brow, her pale blue traveling dress clinging to her skin despite the canvas cover that offered little mercy from the heat. "How much farther to Tucson, Lieutenant?" "Brent Cole," she called to the young officer riding beside the wagon. "Another day's ride, Miss Mara," he answered, straightening with pride at being addressed by the colonel's daughter. "We'll make camp at Dragoon Springs before sundown." June nodded, settling back against the hard wooden seat. At 22, she had lived her whole life inside military posts, moving every time her father received new orders. Fort Bowie had been home for 3 years, its stone walls and constant watchfulness becoming familiar to her. Now she was leaving it behind for a future chosen for her marriage to Captain Drew Harlan, a man she had met only twice at stiff, formal gatherings. A strategic union, her father had called it when he arranged it 6 months earlier. Colonel Ward Mara was not a man to be questioned, least of all by his only daughter. June had accepted her fate with the same quiet resolve that had carried her through every hardship since her mother's death a decade earlier. The wagon jolted over a rock, snapping her back to the present. Through a slit in the canvas, she glimpsed the rugged expanse outside, red earth scattered with tall saguaros and mesquite, all framed by mountains rising blue in the distance. Despite the danger Apache territory was known for, June couldn't help admiring its raw beauty. Suddenly, Lieutenant Brent Cole lifted a hand, signaling the column to halt. June leaned forward, anxious. The lieutenant exchanged a few tense words with Sergeant Hux Garner, then rode back toward her. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Just a precaution." "Miss Mara," he said. Scout spotted dust ahead. His voice carried reassurance, but June saw the strain around his eyes. She had grown up around soldiers she knew when men were uneasy. "Apache," she whispered. Brent forced a thin smile. "Most likely just pronghorn moving through." Still, he motioned the troops into tighter formation. Rifles came up. The air thickened with tension. June swallowed hard. She reached into her travel bag and pulled out the Derringer pistol her father had insisted she carry, a delicate weapon with a pearl handle, but deadly enough at close range. Remember, June, her father had taught her aim for the center. "Don't hesitate." She checked the chambers, then slipped it into the pocket of her dress, the weight strangely comforting against her thigh. The attack struck with terrifying speed. A shrill war cry split the air, echoing from every direction at once. Arrows rained down, followed by rifle fire. Soldiers scrambled, discipline evaporating as warriors rose from behind rocks and brush. June would have sworn couldn't hide a rabbit. "Get down, Miss Mara, Lieutenant." Brent Cole shouted just before an arrow slammed into his chest. He toppled from his horse, eyes wide in disbelief. June dove beneath the wagon seat as bullets shredded the wood around her. Up front, Moss Ridley, the driver, slumped forward, blood spreading across his back. The horses reared in panic before unseen hands seized their reins, yanking the wagon to a violent stop. Through rips in the canvas, June saw flashes of the massacre Apache. Warriors sweeping through the troops. With ghost-like speed, their bodies painted for war, their strikes precise and lethal. The soldiers resisted, but the surprise and fury of the ambush crushed them. When the gunfire finally died, a chilling silence settled over the desert. June crouched frozen beneath the seat, Derringer shaking in her hand. Voices murmured outside in an unfamiliar tongue, broken only by the groans of wounded men being silenced. Then the back of the wagon was ripped open. June raised the pistol, but a powerful hand clamped her wrist. The gun fired harmlessly into the sky. The man dragging her out was tall, broad-shouldered, his copper skin glistening with sweat and streaked with red and black paint. A strip of red cloth bound his dark hair, a single eagle feather, swaying in it. But it was his eyes, dark, sharp, burning, that stole her breath. He barked something in Apache, tightening his grip when she didn't answer. "I don't understand," June forced out, trying to steady her voice. The warrior studied her a beat, then switched to English. "Daughter of Blue Coat," he said, voice deep with a rough accent. "You belong to Tarak now." June lifted her chin. She would not show fear. "My father will come for me. Colonel Ward Mara will hunt you down." A cold smile tugged at Tarak's lips. "I count on it." Around them, warriors moved with brisk efficiency, stripping the fallen soldiers of rifles and gear. June Mara turned her gaze away from the blood-soaked ground, forcing her trembling focus onto the man towering before her. Tarak. She had heard that name whispered through Fort Bowie's barracks, half legend, half nightmare. A marksman feared for his unerring shots and for the long trail of bluecoats who never made it home because of him. He tied her wrists with leather strips firm, but not cruel, then guided her toward a waiting horse. With effortless strength, he lifted her onto the saddle, then swung up behind her. As they readied to leave, another warrior strode over, gesturing angrily at June while speaking in sharp bursts of Apache. Tarak answered him with a clipped response that ended the discussion instantly. The warrior scowled, but stepped back. "What did he want?" June asked, dread hollowing her voice. Tarak's breath warmed her ear as he replied, "He thinks it wiser to kill you now. Less trouble later." "And why didn't you?" she whispered. His arm tightened around her waist as he nudged the horse forward. "Dead you bring one day of satisfaction. Alive you bring your colonel to us." He paused, voice dropping lower. "And I gave my word to Sela." Before June could ask who Sela was, the horse lunged into motion. They galloped away from the ambushed dust, spiraling behind them as they headed toward the jagged rise of the Chiricahua Mountains. She cast one last look at the scattered bodies of her escort lying across the burned red earth. Once the desert swallowed them from sight, her old life vanished with them. As the dying sun bled gold and crimson across the desert sky, June Mara, daughter of the feared Blue Coat, rode into captivity with the very people her father had taught her to despise. Unaware that this ride marked only the beginning, 3 relentless days followed. June ached everywhere. Each night the Apache camped only long enough to drink water and swallow pemmican before pushing onward at dawn. They climbed deeper into the mountains along trails she couldn't see entering territory no patrol had ever returned from. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, they reached a hidden valley tucked between towering cliffs. A stream cut through the center, feeding a quiet lake surrounded by cottonwoods and willows. Scattered beneath the trees were dome-shaped wickiups, made of brush and hides. As they rode in, Apache women and children stepped out, their calls of welcome dying instantly when they saw June. Mutters rose. One woman spat as she passed. "They hate me," June murmured. Tarak dismounted and lifted her off the horse. "You are daughter of the man who burned 3 villages, who sent children and elders on the long walk where many died." His voice was matter-of-fact, not accusing. What else would you expect? June wanted to protest, that she wasn't her father. But the words faltered. How could she defend Colonel Ward Mara to the very people who had suffered under him? Tarak led her to one of the larger wickiups, ignoring the harsh murmurs around them. At the entrance stood an older woman, her face lined with time, yet her posture strong, unbending. She wore a buckskin dress etched with beadwork, her gray hair braided with strips of red cloth like Tarak's. Grandmother Tarak said respectfully in English, clearly for June's sake, "I bring the daughter of Blue Coat." The woman's deep-set eyes studied June without blinking. "So I see." Her English was smooth, steady. "I am Sela. You will stay in my lodge." June stared. "You're Sela, yet you wished me spared." A faint smile curved Sela's lips, humorless, but not unkind. "Death has taken enough from us. Come inside." The lodge was cool and welcoming, woven mats on the earth, soft furs around the edges, an unused fire pit in the center. Sela motioned June to sit, then cut the bindings at her wrists. You must be thirsty and hungry. Rest. We will speak later. When Sela departed, June collapsed onto the fur's legs, shaking with exhaustion, but sleep refused her. Why spare her? What would they do with her? Why had Sela shown compassion? Her thoughts snapped short as the flap lifted. A young Apache woman, Taya, stepped in, carrying a clay pot of water and a bowl of stew. She set them down without meeting June's eyes and slipped out again. June drank deeply, then tasted the stew. Strange herbs, unfamiliar vegetables, but hunger made it incredible. She took stock of herself, torn, dust-caked dress, tangled hair, skin burning from sun and wind, every muscle screaming. But she was alive, unlike Lieutenant Brent Cole and the others. Sela returned, just as June finished eating and tried to smooth her hair. The sun has claimed you, Sela said, touching her own cheek to show June's reddened skin. Yours is not a body made for this land. Nothing about me belongs in this land, June. Mara admitted, her honesty surprising even herself. Sela gave a soft, dry chuckle. Maybe not. Yet here you sit. She lowered herself across from June, moving with a quiet grace, despite her years. Do you know why you still breathe when so many around you didn't? June shook her head. 3 winters passed. Sela began, voice steady, though her eyes clouded with old grief. Soldiers rode into our winter camp near Skeleton Canyon. Your father led them. June's stomach nodded. My daughter had just given birth. The soldiers struck at dawn. They burned our homes. Her face tightened. They shot anyone who ran. My daughter died with her baby in her arms. June's throat closed. I'm sorry, she whispered. Tarak was hunting that morning. When he returned, he found his wife and child gone. Sela paused, the firelight in her eyes dimming. His heart hardened that day. He swore to kill blue coats and any who followed them. June swallowed. Then why am I still alive? Because I asked him to spare you. Sela answered simply, killing the daughter will not bring back the son we lost. More hatred will not heal what is broken. We have had enough of that. Before June could respond, shouting erupted outside the lodge. Sela rose quickly and stepped to the entrance. June hurried after her, peering past her shoulder. A circle of warriors had gathered, voices rising in angry waves. At the center stood Tarak, and opposite him, a shorter, broad-shouldered man with scars carved deep across his face. The man jabbed a finger toward Sela's lodge, toward June. What's happening? June asked, pulse quickening. Karo challenges Tarak for bringing you here, Sela said, her expression tightening. He claims you should be traded or killed, not sheltered. The argument escalated, until suddenly Karo shoved Tarak hard in the chest. In an instant, knives flashed into both men's hands. Stop them, June gasped. Sela shook her head. This is men's business. No one may interfere. The warriors moved into a ring as the 2 fighters circled. Karo struck first, slashing for Tarak's throat. Tarak caught the blade and countered with a swift thrust that Karo barely avoided. They moved with deadly skill, silent, efficient, unwavering. Blood soon streaked both men, a cut along Karo's arm, another across Tarak's shoulder. The crowd fell quiet, breath held as steel gleamed between them. Karo feinted left, then drove in low, his knife slicing across Tarak's ribs. June gasped as the blood slid down his side. Karo pressed forward, relentless, forcing Tarak backward. For a heartbeat, June believed she was about to watch Tarak die, and wondered in terror what fate awaited her then. But as Karo lunged for the killing blow, Tarak dropped suddenly to one knee, sliding beneath the strike. His blade flashed up, stopping at Karo's throat, so close it pressed into the skin without breaking it. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Karo froze, breathing hard. Neither man moved. Then Tarak's voice rang out clear across the camp. The Bluecoat's daughter is mine by right of capture. What becomes of her, I decide. He lowered his knife and stepped back. The challenge was finished. Karo touched the spot on his throat where Tarak's blade had rested, then gave a curt nod. Slowly the warriors drifted away, though many cast suspicious glances at June before returning to their tasks. Sela exhaled heavily. "Come inside, child. There is nothing more to watch." June turned to follow but caught Tarak looking at her across the open space. Their eyes held a spark of recognition passing between them, something she couldn't yet name. He pressed a hand to his wounded side, then turned and walked away. That night June couldn't sleep. Her muscles ached, yet her mind churned. She heard Sela stirring and watched as the elder woman gathered a small bundle of herbs and tools before stepping out into the darkness. Curiosity outweighed fear. June slipped from the lodge and followed at a distance. Sela entered a small shelter at the edge of camp. June stayed hidden, peering through a curtain of brush. Inside, Tarak sat bare-chested beside a small fire, the wound across his ribs, angry and raw in the flickering light. Sela knelt beside him, dipping a cloth into an herbal mixture and cleaning the gash. Tarak flinched but refused to make a sound. They spoke softly in Apache, their words beyond June's understanding. But the pain on Tarak's face and the worry in Sela's eyes needed no translation. Then Sela spoke a word that made Tarak lift his head sharply. He answered her with something that sounded like a question. Sela nodded toward the doorway right at the narrow gap where June Mara was peeking in. Tarak's dark gaze locked with hers, and June jerked back in embarrassment, stung at being caught spying. She hurried into Sela's lodge and pretended to be settled on her bedding by the time the older woman returned. Will he be all right?" June asked, abandoning any attempt at hiding her concern. Sela studied her with quiet amusement. "Tarak has lived through worse wounds." She set her basket down and straightened her bedding. "You should sleep now. Tomorrow your work begins." "Work," June echoed. "Did you think you would lie idle while others labor for you?" Sela said as she settled onto her furs. "You will help the women. Learn our ways. It will do you good." June lay back on her own bedding, mind racing. Would she be treated like a servant? Or was this part of being initiated into their world? Either way, it was clear she wouldn't be leaving soon. As she drifted toward sleep, she kept seeing Tarak's eyes meeting hers in the shadows, steady searching, impossible to forget. Enemy, warrior. Her father would shoot him without hesitation, and yet Tarak had fought to shield her earlier that day, and taken a blade because of it. Nothing at Fort Bowie had prepared her for these contradictions, or for the unsettling truth that something in her wanted to understand the man who had dragged her into this foreign life. The weeks that followed June Mara's arrival in the Apache camp blurred into a harsh routine of unfamiliar duties and hard lessons. True to Sela's promise, June was set to work at once, grinding corn into meal, hauling water from the stream, gathering firewood, and helping with the endless chores that kept the camp alive. The labor was grueling, nothing like the polished domestic tasks she had known at Fort Bowie. At day's end, her hands throbbed with blisters, her back screamed with fatigue, and her pale skin blistered despite the woven hat Sela had given her. But June pushed herself, determined not to appear fragile. Most Apache women ignored her or treated her with open disdain, speaking over her in their own language and laughing when she faltered. Only Sela offered patience, correcting her mistakes, teaching her, explaining tasks June barely understood. "Why do you help me?" June asked one evening as they sat outside watching the sunset cast gold and red across the valley. "The others hate me. They do not hate you," Sela replied, her weathered hands never pausing as she wove a basket. "They hate what stands behind you," my father, June murmured. Sela nodded. "The blue coat, the soldiers, all who pushed us from our land and killed our people." She paused. "But you are not your father. How can you be certain?" June asked quietly. Sela's deep eyes searched her face. "I have watched you. You do not complain. You learn our ways, and you do not look at us as though we are beasts. A faint smile tugged her lips. And you have gentle eyes. June blinked, startled by the simple kindness. I always believed the Apache were savages, she admitted softly. Everyone at the fort said so. And now Sela asked. June looked around the camp, the children chasing each other, the women working side by side, the shared sense of belonging woven through everything. I think you're people. Different from mine, but people. Sela nodded, satisfied. That is why I help you, because you see. Throughout those weeks, Tarak remained distant. June caught glimpses of him returning from hunts, speaking in low tones with other warriors, but he seemed committed to avoiding her. The one time they crossed paths at the stream, he merely acknowledged her with a brief nod before walking away. His avoidance unsettled her more than it should have. One scorching afternoon, June struggled up the rocky path with 2 heavy jars of water. One slipped from her hands, shattering on the ground. Water cascaded across the stones, and she stared at the broken pottery in dismay, knowing she would have to start over. As she knelt to gather the pieces, a shadow stretched across her. She looked up to find Tarak standing over her, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," she said automatically, though she wasn't sure why she was apologizing. "I'll clean this up." He said nothing at first, just watched her pick up the shards. Then he lifted the remaining jar effortlessly. "Come," he said, already turning toward the stream. Startled, June followed. They walked in silence until they reached the water's edge. Tarak filled the jar, then handed it to her. "Thank you," she said, readjusting her grip. He studied her sunburned cheeks, her cracked hands. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" she asked. "That you would break, cry, beg to be taken back to your father." His blunt honesty caught Mara off guard. She straightened her shoulders despite the strain of the heavy jar. "I'm stronger than you think," she replied. Something approval maybe flickered in Tarak's dark eyes. "Yes, you are." He reached for another water jar someone had left beside the stream, and filled it with practiced ease. "Sela says you learn fast," he added. "I try," June answered, oddly warmed by the praise, "though I'm still clumsy with half the things she teaches." "This is not your world," Tarak said, lifting the second jar. "And yet you bend with it." They walked back toward camp together, the silence between them unexpectedly easy. When they reached the trail leading to Sela's lodge, Tarak stopped and handed her the second jar. "My wife was strong too," he said suddenly. "She would have respected your fire." Before June could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her staring after him with a tight, unfamiliar ache in her chest. That evening, as she helped Sela prepare supper, June found herself unable to keep the question in. "He spoke of his wife today," she said, pretending to focus on the pot she was stirring. Sela paused over the herbs she was crushing. "Did he?" "That is rare. Tarak speaks little of Alna, even with me." Alna, June repeated quietly. "That was her name, yes. She was my daughter, bright as the sunrise, fierce as a storm." Sela's voice held both pride and sorrow. She and Tarak were bound from childhood. Their hearts beat in the same rhythm. A strange, unwelcome pinch tightened in June's chest. He must have loved her deeply. Love is too small a word for what they shared. Sela tipped the herbs into the pot. When she died, the strongest part of him died with her. "Will he ever heal?" June asked softly. Sela shot her a shrewd look. "Why do you ask that?" June quickly bent over the cooking fire, avoiding her gaze. "Just curiosity." Sela didn't sound convinced. "Some wounds leave scars that never fade, but even the deepest scars can be touched without pain given enough time." The conversation drifted to other matters, but June's thoughts lingered on Tarak long into the evening. She tried to picture him laughing in love before grief carved him into the hard-edged man she knew. It was nearly impossible. Days later, June was gathering berries along the valley's edge when the distant thud of hooves made her drop into a crouch behind a juniper bush. She watched as Tarak and 3 warriors rode into view. Birds hung from their saddles, and Tarak carried a fresh deer across his horse. As they passed, June shifted slightly, snapping a twig beneath her boot. Tarak spun instantly, rifle lifted. "It's just me," she called, stepping out with both hands raised, her basket of berries dangling from her arm. Tarak lowered the rifle, the tension in his shoulders easing. He said something brief to the warriors, who nodded and rode on ahead. "You shouldn't wander alone," he said as he dismounted and led his horse closer. "It is dangerous." "I'm not wandering. I'm gathering berries for Selah." June lifted the half-full basket. "And I didn't think I needed permission to walk where I can still see the camp." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Always ready for a fight, even unarmed." "I was raised by a soldier," she reminded him. "Yes." "The blue coat." His expression cooled. "A man who gives no mercy." June could not argue. Her father's reputation for ruthlessness was well known. "He is harsh," she admitted, "but he is still my father." Tarak studied her for a long moment. "You do not defend what he has done." "How could I?" she replied. "I've seen how your people live now. I've heard the stories." She met his gaze steadily. "What happened to your wife, to your son, it was wrong." Something shifted in his eyes, surprise maybe, or a softened edge. He quickly hid. He looked away, scanning the horizon. "Your deer will spoil if you don't bring it back soon," June said gently, breaking the tense quiet. He nodded, but instead of leaving, he reached into a pouch at his waist and pulled something small that glinted in the sunlight. "For you," he said, offering it. It was a comb carved from bone, etched with intricate designs and tiny blue beads. June turned it over in her hands, touched in a way she couldn't quite speak. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "But why your hair?" Tarak said, simply motioning toward her face. "It falls into your eyes while you work. This will help." Such a practical explanation, yet the gesture felt anything but. "Thank you," she said softly. He gave a single nod, then swung onto his horse and rode off without another word, leaving June, Mara, standing among the juniper bushes with the comb pressed to her palm and a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the Arizona heat. That night she used the comb to tame her unruly hair, braiding it long in the same style she'd seen the Apache women wear. When she stepped out of the lodge, Selah noticed immediately. "The comb suits you," she said. Tarak chose well. June touched the ornament self-consciously. "You knew he gave it to me. I saw him carving it the last few nights." Selah's knowing eyes flickered with something like amusement. "He watches you more than you realize." The thought sent a flutter through June's stomach she tried to ignore. "He pities me, perhaps." Selah made a dismissive sound. "Tarak does not give gifts out of pity." She stirred the fire thoughtfully. "Guard your heart, Summerhawk." "Summerhawk," June repeated. "It is the name I call you in my thoughts," Selah explained. "Fierce and proud as the hawk, but warm as summer in your gaze." June felt unexpectedly moved. "And what must I guard against?" Selah looked toward where Tarak sat among the warriors, his face lit by firelight. "There are many thorns on the path ahead for both of you." Before June could ask more, several women arrived with food, ending the moment of confidence. But Selah's warning lingered in June's mind. "Be careful with your heart." Too late, June realized, as she glanced at Tarak across the flames, far too late. As summer faded into autumn, quiet shift swept through the Apache village. Days shortened, nights cooled. Hunters returned more often, building stores for winter. Women stitched warmer clothes and strengthened the wickiups for the cold ahead. June had settled into the rhythm of camp life more deeply than she could ever have imagined. Her hands were calloused, her skin darkened by sun, and she moved with the steady efficiency of someone who now lived close to the earth. She still wore her own dress, but it had been patched with sinew and paired with moccasins and a rabbit fur vest Selah had gifted her. More surprising was how the Apache themselves had begun to change toward her. Some still eyed her warily, but others now accepted her presence. Children who once hid from her now tugged at her skirt, asking about the world beyond the mountains. A few women even taught her their language, laughing at her mistakes but praising her efforts. And then there was Tarak. Ever since he'd given her the comb, something between them had shifted. He no longer avoided her. They shared short, quiet conversations when chance brought them together. Once he'd even shown her how to scrape arrow shafts, his strong hands guiding hers with surprising gentleness. The contact had sent a warmth spiraling through her that had nothing to do with the sun. June knew she was walking on dangerous ground. These feelings that stirred whenever Tarak was near, they were unthinkable, forbidden. He was Apache. She was the daughter of his greatest enemy. And even if she weren't, his heart still lay with Alna, the wife he'd lost. But none of that stopped the racing of her pulse when their eyes met, or the dreams that found her at night. Sela, ever perceptive, noticed. The heart chooses its own road, she had said one evening, her voice soft, even when the mind warns the road leads nowhere. One crisp autumn morning, June was grinding corn when raised voices drew her attention. Naru the scout had thundered into camp, his horse foaming from hard riding. June set her task aside and stepped closer, listening intently to the rapid Apache words. She understood enough to grasp the truth. Soldiers had been spotted. A large patrol moving with tracking dogs. Her father's men coming for her. Her heart clenched. She should have felt joy. Instead, a complicated tangle of fear, confusion, and something she didn't dare name left her breathless. Camp exploded into motion. Warriors armed themselves. Women packed vital supplies. Children were gathered and hushed. The peaceful rhythm of recent months dissolved into urgent preparation. June stood paralyzed until Sela appeared beside her. "They come for you," the old woman said quietly. "Your father leads them." "How far?" June whispered. 2 days' ride, perhaps less. "They follow a hunter's trail leading out of the valley." Sela studied her face. "You should be glad. Soon you return to your people, my people." The words struck June like a blow. Once she would have answered without hesitation. Forts and soldiers had been her world. But now, she wasn't sure. "What will happen?" she asked softly. "The council meets now," Sela said. "They will decide." Sela took June gently by the arm, steering her away from the chaos rising in camp. "Some say we should leave you where the soldiers can find you and push deeper into the mountains," she murmured. Then she hesitated. "And others? They want to kill me before my father arrives." "June." Mara finished, a cold dread settling in her stomach. Sela didn't deny it. There is fear everywhere. The bluecoat is known for his skill in tracking. If he discovers this valley, many will fall. "And what does Tarak say?" June asked before she could stop herself. A knowing spark lit Sela's eyes. "He speaks for you, says you remain under his protection." The knowledge warmed June in a place she wished it wouldn't. Fear for him tightened around her heart. "My father won't stop searching," she whispered. "Not until he finds me or what's left of me. Then we must give him what he wants." Sela said cryptically. Before June could ask more, the elder woman guided her toward the lodge. Inside, Sela retrieved a small parcel wrapped in deerskin and placed it in June's hands. "Open it when you are alone," she instructed. "I must speak with the council now." Left alone, June unwrapped the bundle with trembling fingers. Inside lay a leather pouch filled with pungent dried herbs, a bone-handled knife like Tarak's, and most surprising, a folded piece of paper sealed with wax. She broke the seal and found a rough map of the mountains, showing the valley and a path heading southeast toward what looked like a trading post. What was Sela planning? Footsteps approached. June quickly wrapped the items and tucked them beneath her bedding just as the flap lifted. Tarak stepped inside, his face shadowed with gravity. "The council has spoken," he said without preamble. "You must leave tonight." June rose to her feet, pulse quickening. "Leave, go where?" Away from here. Before the soldiers arrive. His voice was taut, controlled. Caro and the others want to leave your body for the blue coat to find. They believe it will stop his chase. A chill swept through her. And what do you say? Tarak held her gaze, dark eyes unwavering. I say you have earned the right to live. The words hung between them, too heavy with meaning to dismiss. June took a step closer, close enough to see the faint beat of his pulse. Why, she whispered. Why protect me after all my father has done? For a moment, Tarak said nothing, the battle inside him clear in every line of his face. When he finally spoke, the words were rough with restrained emotion. Because you are not your father. Because you work beside our women without complaint. Because you learn our ways and honor them. His voice deepened. Because when you look at me, you see a man, not an enemy. June's breath caught. Tarak. He silenced her with a gentle hand against her cheek, a touch far too tender for a warrior's hard life. Sela has prepared for this moment. She has known it would come. The bundle, June murmured. The map. He nodded. She sees farther than most. There is a path for you, for us, if we are willing to walk it. Us. The single word sparked something bright and dangerous inside her. I will guide you to safety, Tarak said, withdrawing his hand. Beyond that? He left the rest unspoken. When do we leave? June asked, steadying herself. After dark. Take only what you can carry. He moved toward the exit, then paused. Be ready when I come. When he was gone, June retrieved Sela's bundle. Now she understood why the elder had given it to her. She spread out the map, tracing the path with her fingertip. It led to a trading post owned by Hale McCready, someone Sela apparently trusted. Shortly before dusk, Sela returned to the lodge. She didn't look surprised to find June prepared. So Tarak told you, she said. June nodded. He says he will guide me out. Yes, and perhaps find his own way as well. Sela began adding more items to a small pack. The herbs will heal. The knife will protect. The map will lead you to Hale McCready. He trades fairly with our people. He will help you. Help me, what June asked. Return to my father. Sela fixed her with a piercing stare. Is that what you want? The question struck June like a blow. 3 months ago, the answer would have been immediate. Now I don't know, she admitted softly. Then you must discover the truth of your heart. Sela placed the pack in her hands. Tarak risks much to help you. Remember that. I will. June hesitated, then embraced the woman who had become teacher, guardian, and friend. Thank you for everything, Sela. The older woman returned the embrace briefly. May the spirits guide your path, Summerhawk. When full darkness settled over the valley, Tarak appeared at the entrance of the lodge, as silently as a shadow breaking from the trees. He wore buckskins instead of his usual leggings, a rifle slung beside his bow knife, secured at his hip, and a pack matching June Mara's hanging across his back. It's time, he said, simply. June followed him through the sleeping camp, keeping to the edges where the firelight didn't reach. At the line of trees, 2 horses stood, already saddled, their silhouettes faint in the moonlight. We ride through the night, Tarak explained, once they mounted. Rest in daylight. Less chance of being seen. They slipped into the darkness with only the soft thud of hooves breaking the quiet. Tarak led with uncanny precision, navigating narrow trails and shadowed ridges, as if the mountains whispered the way to him. June stayed close behind, alert to every sound. She realized they weren't only fleeing her father's soldiers, they were also running from Apache hunters, if Caro discovered their disappearance before dawn. As the night deepened, the land grew harsher. They dismounted, often guiding the horses over unstable rock and narrow passes. By the time the first pale glow touched the eastern sky, June's muscles burned with exhaustion, but she refused to fall behind. Tarak found a sheltered ravine where a spring bubbled out of stone. We rest here, he said, steadying her as she dismounted. Sleep. I will keep watch. They shared a simple meal of jerky and dried berries, before Tarak spread blankets beneath a shaded overhang. "What about you?" she asked, noticing he had set nothing out for himself. "I'll watch," he repeated. Sleep. June tried, but every rustle of wind or distant cry jerked her back to alertness. Only when fatigue overcame her did she drift into a shallow, uneasy sleep. She woke to Tarak's hand gripping her shoulder, urgency tightening his voice. "Riders, we need to go." The sun was low. She had slept nearly the entire day. She scrambled to help him, pack, her heart pounding. "How many?" she whispered. "4, maybe 5. Not soldiers." His expression darkened. "Apache. Caro leads them." Cold dread sliced through her. "How did he find us?" "I laid a false trail north." "Not enough." Tarak cinched a strap tight. "He knows this land as I do." They rode deeper into the ravine until it widened into an open valley, then a rifle cracked bark exploding from a tree ahead. "Ride," Tarak shouted. June didn't need telling. They thundered across open ground, aiming for the distant tree line. More shots followed, wild at the distance, but terrifying nonetheless. They plunged into the forest, weaving between trunks as bullets hissed overhead. June pressed low against her horse's neck, her pulse roaring louder than the gunfire. Behind them came shouts in Apache. Caro's warriors were closing in. The woods gave way to a steep, rocky drop. Tarak swung off his horse and motioned sharply. "Too dangerous to ride. Lead them. Stay close." They picked their way down the horses, slipping and snorting in protest. Loose stones skittered down the slope, echoing the urgency of their descent. Above them, their pursuers grew louder. Then disaster struck. June's foot slid on loose shale. She felt hard pain jolting through her ankle as it twisted beneath her. A cry escaped. Before she could choke it back, Tarak was beside her instantly. "Can you stand?" She tried, biting back a wince. "Yes, but I can't move fast." He made a swift, brutal choice. "We leave the horses. They'll follow the main trail." His eyes locked on hers. "We go another way." It was desperate but necessary. He supported her weight, guiding her to steadier ground, then turned onto a steeper route, weaving between massive boulders. "Where does this go?" she gasped, limping through the pain. "To water." Our tracks vanished there. They descended painfully slow, June clinging to Tarak for balance. Behind them came the distressed cries of their horses as Caro and his men claimed them. "They'll know we went on foot," she whispered, despair rising. "Yes," Tarak said, steady and sure, "but not where." He guided her round a sharp bend, and there, tumbling down the rock, was a narrow mountain stream. "Now we walk in the water." The icy current numbed her injured ankle, a small mercy as they stepped into the rushing flow, but the slick stones beneath their feet threatened to send her crashing again with every move. Still June pushed on, driven by fear, pain, and the fierce determination not to slow the man, risking everything for her. Tarak kept his arm firmly around June Mara, refusing to let her falter as they pushed through the freezing current. When darkness wrapped the forest again, they reached a narrow waterfall, spilling into a deep stone pool. Tarak guided her behind the shimmering curtain, where the rock hollowed inward, forming a shallow, hidden cave. "We stay here tonight," he said, lowering her gently to a dry section of stone. "Caro won't find this place after dark." "And tomorrow?" June asked, trembling from exhaustion and the mountain chill. "Tomorrow we reach Hale McCready's post." He dug into his pack, pulling out a strip of cloth. Carefully, almost reverently, he wrapped her swollen ankle. "It isn't far." "If I can walk," she muttered, bracing for the pain ahead. "You'll walk," Tarak said with quiet certainty as he finished tying the bandage. "You walk because you must." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Sela told me the name suits you." Then he pulled off his buckskin shirt and draped it across her shoulders. Warmth and his scent closed around her like an embrace. "What about you?" she whispered. "Won't you freeze? I've slept through colder nights." He settled beside her close enough for their bodies to share heat. Rest. I'll keep watch. June hesitated only a moment before leaning into him, drawn by more than warmth. His arm tightened around her, automatically strong and protective. Tarak, she whispered, why did you really help me escape? Tell me the truth. In the dim glow filtering through the waterfall, his face was carved in shadow, unreadable. For a long stretch he said nothing at all. Then in a voice scraped raw by memory, he answered, when soldiers killed my wife and my little boy, I swore to hate every white face until the day I died. I meant to take as many as I could before joining Alna and our son. His arm tightened around her. Then you came, the daughter of the man I hated most. He shook his head slowly. I tried to hate you. What changed? She breathed. You, he said simply. He turned to face her, their breaths mingling in the damp, cool air. You honored our ways. You showed Sela kindness. You stood your ground when others would have broken. His fingers brushed her cheek light as a whisper. And when I looked into your eyes, I saw something I thought died with Alna. June's heart hammered so hard she could barely draw breath. What did you see? A future, he whispered. A reason to live, instead of only surviving. The words hung between them, dangerous and beautiful. Then Tarak lowered his head slow as sunrise until his lips found hers. The first touch was gentle, almost questioning. When she didn't pull away, when she leaned into him instead, the kiss deepened into something fierce, hungry, and utterly consuming. Heat spread through her chest and down her limbs, until she forgot the cold, the pain, the danger, everything but him. When they finally drew apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. This road is dangerous, he murmured. Your father will never accept it. I know, June said softly, the decision firming inside her like iron. But the path is mine to choose. He kissed her once more, brief but full of promise. Sleep, he said, settling her against him. Tomorrow will test us. Cradled in his arms, June drifted toward sleep. Unsure which outcome terrified her more, being found by her father's soldiers or falling into Caro's hands. Both meant losing Tarak, and that thought felt unbearable. Before sleep claimed her, she made a silent vow. No one would take her from him, not her father, not Caro, not anyone. Dawn rose pale and cold mist coiling up from the forest floor like breath from another world. June woke to find Tarak, already at the cave's edge, rifle across his knees, watchful as a hawk. How's your ankle? He asked without turning. She tested it, wincing. Still swollen, but I can walk. Good. We leave soon. He handed her jerky and dried fruit. Eat. You'll need strength. As they shared the meager breakfast, Tarak outlined their route. Hale McCready's post is half a day from here. We follow the stream down to the river, then east through the valley. You'll see the post where two trails cross. And once we reach it, June asked quietly, what then? McCready will help us find a safe place. Sela says he has friends among the Quakers. People who help those who want peace. His jaw tightened. Even Indians. You would leave your people. Her breath caught. The sacrifice struck deep. My path with them ended the moment I chose to get you out. Tarak's voice held no regret, only truth. Caro will call me traitor now. A heavy ache settled in June's chest. I never meant to pull you away from your people. The choice was mine, he said firmly. Now we move. They stepped out from behind the waterfall. June's ankle throbbed, but she gritted her teeth. They had no room for weakness, not with soldiers behind them and Apache hunters on their trail. They followed the stream as it tumbled down the mountainside, water washing away every footprint they left. When the ground grew too rough for her to manage, Tarak lifted June Mara onto his back, carrying her with steady strength. But most of the trail was too perilous for such a burden, forcing them onward step by step. By midday they reached the wide river. He had promised a fast churning ribbon of water, cutting a deep path between sheer valley walls. Here the current was too wild to follow any longer. "We stay on the bank now," Tarak said as he helped June up the slick slope. "If we move quick, 2 hours to Hale McCready's post." They'd covered barely half that distance when disaster crashed down. Rounding a bend, they came face to face with a military patrol watering their horses. For one frozen heartbeat, nobody even breathed. Then a soldier shouted, "It's Miss Mara." Tarak reacted instantly, shoving June behind him and raising his rifle. But before he could fire, new voices erupted from the trees. "Apache, take cover." The forest exploded as Caro and his warriors stormed down from the ridge. Caught between soldiers and Apache, Tarak seized June's hand and pulled her toward a spill of jagged boulders near the riverbank. "Stay low," he ordered, positioning himself between her and the hail of bullets and arrows that tore through the clearing. Though outnumbered, the soldiers had repeating rifles. 2 of Caro's warriors fell in the opening volley. The Apache scattered, slipping into trees and shadows as they answered shot for shot. June pressed against cold stone, trembling as death thundered around them. Tarak fired with deadly focus, never wasting a round. "We must cross the river," he said during a brief pause in the fighting. "Rocks make a path downstream." She nodded, unable to speak through the fear clawing at her throat. When he signaled, they bolted from cover, skimming the river's edge as bullets snapped overhead. They were nearing the crossing when someone shouted, "There! The Apache has the colonel's daughter." A rifle cracked. Chips of stone blasted from the rock beside June's head. Tarak threw her to the ground, covering her with his own body as more shots followed. "Go," he urged, rolling away and returning fire. "Cross the river. I'll hold them." "Not without you," she cried, grabbing his arm. His dark eyes met hers, intense, unyielding. "I will follow. Now go." Her heart torn, June obeyed, limping onto the chain of rocks, cutting across the water. Her ankle nearly buckled, but she forced herself onward until she reached the far bank. She turned just in time to see Tarak firing from behind a fallen log. Beyond him, Caro and 2 surviving warriors were circling closer, using the chaos to flank him. "Behind you," June screamed. Tarak twisted just as Caro lunged, blade flashing. They crashed to the ground in a brutal struggle. June could only watch in horror. Without thinking, without any plan beyond pure need, June yanked the bone-handled knife Sela had given her and plunged back into the river. The current tore at her, but she fought her way across. One Apache warrior spotted her and raised his bow, but a gunshot cracked and the warrior toppled into the river. June scrambled onto the bank as Caro drove Tarak toward the ground, his knife arcing toward Tarak's throat. June didn't hesitate. She hurled herself onto Caro, driving her knife deep into his shoulder. Caro roared, backhanding her so hard she skidded across the stones, but the moment was enough. Tarak rose like a striking panther, his blade plunging into Caro's heart in one decisive fatal thrust. As the warrior collapsed, Tarak hauled June upright. "Why did you come back?" he demanded, voice shaking with fury and fear. "Because I love you," she said, simple, unguarded. "True." Time seemed to stop, just the 2 of them in the wreckage of battle, seeing each other with absolute clarity. Then the moment shattered. June, Mara." The voice was deep, commanding, and painfully familiar. June turned to see her father emerging from the trees with a full detachment of soldiers. Colonel Ward Mara looked exactly as memory held him, tall, unyielding, a man carved from grit and iron. But his eyes, usually hard as stone, flickered with unmistakable relief when they found her. "Father," she whispered, feeling Tarak tense beside her. The colonel's gaze swept the scene, the fallen warriors, his daughter's altered appearance, and the Apache standing protectively at her side. "Step away from her, savage," he barked, leveling his pistol at Tarak. No, June rushed between them, arms outstretched. "Father, don't shoot. He saved my life." Colonel Mara's eyes narrowed into icy slits. "Move aside, June. That's an order. I will not." June Mara stood her ground, refusing to move, feeling Tarak solid as a wall behind her. If you intend to kill him, father, you'll have to shoot through me. Confusion and fury warred across Colonel Ward Mara's face. Have you lost your senses, girl? He demanded. This Apache slaughtered your escort. He abducted you, and then he protected me, June shot back. He risked his life more than once to keep me safe. From his own people as well as yours. Her father's cold stare flicked between them, recalculating. You're not thinking clearly, June. The doctors call it Stockholm Syndrome. Captives sometimes grow unhealthy attachments to their kidnappers. This isn't confusion, she answered quietly. This is clarity. She reached back, fingers threading through, Tarak's hand gripping tight. I'm not returning with you. Her father's jaw locked. The hell you aren't. Sergeant, arrest that Apache and bring my daughter here. Soldiers stepped forward, rifles raised. Tarak braced himself, ready to fight even though the odds were hopeless. Hold it. A new voice cut through the clearing. Everyone turned. A bearded white man, in worn buckskins, stood at the tree line. A shotgun slung across his chest, 2 armed companions flanking him. Hail McCready. He introduced himself coolly. And this? Here's my territory. You're turning into a battleground. His sharp eyes swept the scene. Looks to me like the lady made her choice, Colonel. Might be wise to respect it. This is army business, McCready, Colonel. Mara snapped. Stay out of it. See, that's where we disagree, McCready said, stepping further into the open, as his men fanned out. That Apache, you know he's got a name, Tarak, and he's under my protection. Has been, since Sella sent word he was on his way. Sella, the colonel repeated stiffly. Wise old woman, McCready said. Sees farther than most. She figured your daughter and Tarak here might be needing a fresh start. I'm inclined to help him get it. Colonel Mara flushed a furious red. That man is a murderer. A renegade. And you've never killed an Apache. McCready countered. Never torched a village. Never marched women and kids to death on some godforsaken trail. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. We all got blood on our hands out here, McCready finished. Question is, how much more do we intend to spill? Colonel Mara didn't answer. He was calculating again the way generals do when choosing between bad options. Finally, he looked at June. June, he said softly. Captain Drew Harlan is waiting at Fort Bowie. The wedding arrangements, I'm not marrying Captain Harlan, she cut in firmly. I never intended to. Then come home and we'll sort this out, he pleaded. The steel in his voice cracked just enough to show the father beneath the officer. Don't throw your life away on this. Tarak's hand tightened around hers, a silent vow. She drew strength from it. My life, June said steadily, isn't being thrown away. It's finally going where I choose. She inhaled, heart hammering. I love him, and I'm staying with him. Colonel Mara went still, as if the words had struck him like a bullet. So he said at last, voice hollow, you choose him over your own blood. I choose love over hate, June answered softly. A lesson I learned from Tarak's people. The clearing held its breath. Then with a motion as crisp as any battlefield command, Colonel Mara holstered his pistol. Sergeant, he barked. Collect our dead. We're returning to the fort. But sir, Miss Mara, the sergeant stammered. Colonel Mara didn't look back. Miss Mara, he said in a hard, emotionless voice, made her decision. As far as the army is concerned. She died in the ambush. Understood. The sergeant hesitated, then saluted. Yes, sir. Without another glance toward his daughter, Colonel Mara turned and strode away. Soldiers trailing him in somber silence. Only when the last blue coat vanished into the trees did June finally break, tears spilling freely. Tarak turned her gently toward him, brushing her cheeks with rough, careful thumbs. You surrendered everything. He murmured, guilt and wonder mingling in his voice. June shook her head. I gained everything that matters. McCready cleared his throat loudly. Touch and moment and all, but we best move, he said. Your father may think twice, and one of Caro's men slipped off alive. Neither of them aimed to wish you well. They followed McCready to his trading post, a stout log structure protected by a palisade wall. There, around a crackling fire, he explained the plan. He'd escort them north to a peaceful Quaker settlement in Colorado Territory, a place where mixed families weren't hunted by soldiers or tribes. Sella was mighty clear about getting you two out safe, McCready said, nodding toward their clasped hands. Claimed the spirits, showed her a vision, said you'd build something new together. Will we ever see her again? June whispered, leaning into Tarak's shoulder. McCready shrugged. Hard to say. The Chiricahua are pushed deeper into the mountains every season. But that old woman, if she wants to find someone, she finds him. Later that night, as the two of them stood alone on Hale McCready's porch, watching stars scatter across the wide Arizona sky, Tarak drew June Mara gently against him. I never believed peace would find me again after Alna died. He admitted, his voice low with vulnerability. Never imagined love might return. Nor I, June whispered, remembering the stiff, carefully measured life she once lived before the ambush that shattered her world and rebuilt it anew. It took losing everything I knew to finally discover what my heart was searching for. Tarak turned her to face him fully, moonlight carving a solemn tenderness into his features. No one will ever take you from me, he vowed, echoing the very words Sela had once foreseen. Not soldiers, not Apache warriors, not even the spirits who walk between worlds. Never, June breathed, lifting onto her toes to seal that promise with a kiss. Above them, the night sky shimmered like 1,000 silent witnesses, bearing witness to a vow meant to withstand every storm the frontier could throw. A vow carried into the years ahead, years of carving out a life together, building something new with their hands and hearts, far from the reach of old hatreds and blood-soaked feuds. As June had told her father, she had not thrown her life away. She had finally found it in the arms of a warrior who learned to open his heart again, and in doing so taught her how to truly live. The end. Dear traveler of stories, thank you for riding alongside June Mara and Tarak through the rugged wilds of the Arizona Territory. Though their tale unfolded in 1875, its truth still echoes across time. In this journey, we witnessed how love, real love, can take root in the most unlikely ground. Between former enemies, amid grief, beneath the weight of wounds carried for generations. June and Tarak showed us that courage comes in many forms, listening instead of judging, reaching across differences, choosing compassion over fear, choosing forgiveness over vengeance, choosing each other when the world said they shouldn't. Even today, when so many barriers still rise between cultures and beliefs, their story reminds us of something vital. We are not prisoners of the wars our parents fought. We are not bound to the past we were born into. We can choose a new path, one shaped by empathy, respect, and the quiet bravery of loving someone the world tells us we shouldn't. June chose understanding. Tarak chose healing. Together they built a future no army and no hatred could ever tear away. May you walk your own road with the same courage. May your heart stay open to unexpected connections. May love find you in every season, and may every sunrise bring new hope to your horizon. Until our next trail ride, with all our heart, Wild West Lone Hearts. If this tale stirred something in your soul, we warmly invite you to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. Your support keeps us riding forward, bringing you more stories filled with love, redemption, and the unforgettable twists of frontier life. Thank you sincerely. And remember, stay till the end of this video to follow the trail to another one of our heart-touching Wild West stories. Click it and let yourself be surprised all over again. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work